I'm Craig Wahl. I have spent the last just under 30 years working in technology and technology companies. Have had over 700 people report to me in my life. I once grew a team from 8 to just under 300 in less than 2 years. I've been a part of $500 million in capital raises. I've seen IP lawsuits, bankruptcies, massive layoffs, everything in between. And I now bring that to others in terms of helping them grow their businesses. And I've authored the book, as Darlington mentioned, The Walk, Leadership When There's No Finish Line.
Okay, thank you so much. The title of your book is very, very interesting. Can you take us through how you were able to get that title and what title actually means?
So the big thing for me has been that the journey I've been on is how I've kind of come to understand the different things about leading people and the challenges of growing a business. And so I set out to help others understand that leading is just a journey and it's not actually an outcome or a destination.
Okay, thank you so much. So your tagline is "Forget controlling outcomes." Tell us what surviving a near fatal accident and leading through $500 million hypergrowth journey teach you about control.
Well, that's an interesting story. So we go back many, many years, about 30, and I was between first and second year of college, so going into my sophomore year. And me and a couple buddies were doing what would be pretty common back then, which is we piled in our car. We were going to the town over, going to a bar to see a band. And unfortunately, through nobody's fault, we crossed over and hit head on with another car. The time that this happened, I was sitting in the back seat and there wasn't shoulder straps. And so all the force and the pressure ended up around my hips and it shattered my L2 vertebrae and did a whole bunch of other damage inside of me. And I went into the hospital as a 190-pound athlete and came out 4 weeks later as a 110-pound 20-year-old who had to learn how to basically do everything again. And I'll never forget the moment when I was standing at the top of the stairs in our house and I was thinking to myself, could I actually walk down these stairs without falling? And when you're that young and you have to ask yourself those kinds of questions, it really had an impact on me as a person, because when you're young, you think you're invisible or invincible and that you can do anything and nothing will get in your way, and that you are in control of your life. And that really was the first point in my life where I started to understand that you aren't in control necessarily. It's how you react to what happens to you that creates the feeling of comfort. But I learned that there's really no such thing as control, because you don't know what's going to happen to you. And as I continued to mature and grow and started to go into the workforce and start working for companies, it was something that I could always reflect back on. And it was an important part of who I was, because I had learned so early that life is hard, but it challenges you in ways that can make you substantially stronger and better as a person if you approach it the right way. That you learn to grow from it, you take meaningful lessons from it, that you don't identify with what happened to you, you identify with what you did about it. And so that really, it was the jumping off point for me around recognizing that in life and in leadership, you really aren't in control. What you have is the ability to influence and affect and help others grow, but you're never actually in control.
Okay, thank you so much. I love the way you ended that. You are never actually in control. So, Craig, you have said that leadership often breaks people not because they don't care, but because they care deeply and nobody prepared them for the cost. What does that cost actually look like in practical terms, like say in your own terms?
I'm sorry, Darlington. I lost you there. I didn't hear that.
Okay, so I said you mentioned that leadership often breaks people, not because they don't care, but because they care deeply and nobody prepared them for the cost. What does that cost actually look like in practical terms for you?
Well, one of the things is that, right. So one of the things that I've learned is people come to work wanting to do a really good job, and people come to work wanting to be a part of something. You're breaking up really bad. Like I can't hear you half the time, and I think we're talking over each other.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So, you said that leadership often breaks people, not because they don't care, but because they care deeply and nobody prepared them for the cost. What does that cost actually look like for you?
That's an interesting question, right? So as I've learned over the years that people come to work every day wanting to do their best, and they want to be a part of something important. But as a leader, you can't always give them everything they want. You can't always make life and make work something that they get to do the things they love and grow in the places they want to grow and take on opportunities that they want. And so it creates this really challenging situation where, as a leader, you're committed to your team and your employees and the company, and you likely care very deeply about that, but you can't always do the things that you would like to do for people. And so now you're not just letting them down, you're starting to let yourself down. And that can be really hard on leaders, because that stress and pressure is so much more than the pressure of work. It's the human pressure of the relationship of two people. And so when you think about that, I can remember so many times in my career where I put unnecessary pressure and stress on myself because I felt like I was letting people down, when in reality, as a leader, as I learned over time, that to do the most respectful thing was to be clear in communication and help articulate where the company needed to go and be as transparent as I could about what I knew and what I didn't know, to help them move forward and not wear that cost myself. Because the way I view this is that as a leader, you're kind of like a cell phone in some ways, and you have a battery, and it gets drained and needs to be recharged, because you're constantly doing emotional things with different people in your leadership role, and it can cost you stress and burnout and anxiety and feelings that you don't want to admit, about guilt and these sorts of things, and you have to be cognizant of that and manage that effectively.
So, Craig, you scaled a team from 8 employees to nearly 300 in under 2 years. What leadership lesson from that kind of hypergrowth do most people never talk about?
So a couple things. That time was such a wonderful time, but also one of the most challenging times in my career. I think that people don't realize how much failure goes on. That when people hear that, how it ended up was really good, but the journey in between wasn't as smooth as I think people want to believe, and sort of romanticize. The reality is, we made a lot of mistakes. We hired a lot of people, and some of those people weren't good people, and some of those people didn't make it, and some of those people were awesome and did many great things. We made decisions to build teams, processes, ways of working, buy systems and not all of them are right. And so that's one of the biggest takeaways I have from that time, which is that progress and failure are part of rapidly growing a team, but they're also just part of leading. Is that you're not going to get it right, and that's okay. That especially when you're trying to lead a team, that the not getting it right is part of the learning experience, and it helps people grow faster, as long as it's done in a way that helps people are supported. That's one of the big ones. The other big one for me is, and I don't think we talk nearly enough about this, we like to talk as leaders about delegating and accountability and things of that nature. And I like to go a little bit deeper and get to sort of some of the more base things that happen as a leader. And in that phase of my growth and in that phase of rapid expansion, one of the biggest things I had to learn was it wasn't just that I needed people to trust me. I had to find a way to trust them. Because things were growing so fast and because there were so many moving parts, I had to find ways to trust people to do things without my involvement. And had to build strategies and ways of doing that to help them be successful. But it started with my willingness to trust others to do things while I went off and did other things. And so if I'm to sum up sort of this in a succinct sort of thought, it starts with learning how to trust people, and it includes lots of mistakes, and the willingness to celebrate progress, and learn from the failures that you have.
All right, Craig. So, from my own personal experience, not as a leader though, but as someone who has looked up to a leader, why do you think leaders still feel like those who they are leading are not capable of doing what they have probably taught or embedded in them?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges I see with leadership, with people who go get into leadership, is that it's the outcomes that and the destination that they're trying to get to isn't aligned with what a good leader is. And so I think about it like this: if you're leading an organization, you have to have good revenue and good metrics and a successful company. But in many cases, that can be at the cost of you as a leader, because you don't know how to handle the hard times, the moving towards more revenue, what to do when you don't have enough money to pay your bills, and so they're in constant collision with each other, and so it's for most leaders, they will default back to the things that they know and they're good at, rather than lean into the things in leadership that will make them a better leader over time, and ultimately, in my experiences, have shown to have better outcomes. Things like being empathetic and being vulnerable, and I don't mean this in the context of like sharing everything and all that. What I mean is understand who's around you, how much they can help you, ask for that help, recognizing that your role as a leader is not to make all the decisions and do everything. It's to ensure that decisions get made and that things are happening. And so I have a story that I tell people about when I was leading a team. And it's one of those just basic things in business where we went to set up a system to help us manage the day-to-day operations of the team. And the way it was done is pretty common. Lots of people involved, lots of the team members involved, lots of good conversation, lots of debate. And we set it up and it didn't work. And in a meeting with a large team, I'm the one responsible for it. And I had choice. I could have blamed the team and said they didn't do a good job, or or I could lean into being a good leader and admit it just didn't work. Some of the things we did worked, but lots of the things we didn't. And we had to learn from that, adjust, change, and move forward. And the reaction from the team was significant. There was a lot of willingness and frankly satisfaction that a leader would admit that something went wrong. And that's just one small example of how leaders end up in situations where they choose to take an easier path because it may be faster. It may give them the initial result they want, rather than leaning into some of the harder things to do in human to human leadership that will in the long run pay off and pay dividends.
Okay, Craig, thank you so much. So, my next question for you is this. What is the difference between managing pressure and being consumed by pressure?
So for me, it's one of these weird situations where pressure is what we put on ourselves. It's not always what is put on us. It's how we react to what happens around us. And I can think back through my career and have been under an immense amount of pressure at many times. And you have a choice whenever anything happens. And I've always leaned into taking a step back, taking a moment, composing myself, trying to stay calm, allowing the logical part of your brain to stay engaged rather than letting the emotional part of your body and brain take over. And for a lot of leaders, that's not a skill that they've learned how to do. And it is that, like, it takes practice. That when pressure comes, and it will come, your ability to handle that and the way you behave during that will dictate what kind of leader you become and what kind of leader you are. And the best leaders understand that the pressure will be there, that it rarely goes away, and that it's your ability to manage that, engage with it, and understand it is part of the job as a leader. Is how you can best manage it. For me, pressure builds in many cases for reasons that are in your control. And I've already told you that I don't believe you're in control very often. So why would I say that? And what I mean by that is it's the things you do and how you react and the decisions you make and how you empower people that will release the pressure. And those activities are in your control. It doesn't mean that the pressure doesn't come and you're not going to feel it, but it's how you address it, what you do with it, and how you move forward that will release it.
All right, thank you so much, Craig. So, tell us, what does true leadership look like? Because when it's time for leaders to show their leaders is when things become very messy and imperfect. Most times, leaders tend to shy away. From my experience, as not as a leader, as I always say, as somebody who has been under leadership, when there's pressure, leaders, they try to shy away and probably they want to push the blame on those who they are leading. So how can they show true leadership when things are messy, imperfect, and when there is no clear finish line?
So this is one of the biggest challenges for leadership, and it's one of the biggest reasons that I did end up writing the book. But if I wanted to really highlight some of the key things that help leaders manage through and get through the messy times, the long duration in the middle, there's a couple of key things. We can talk about some of the core fundamentals of leadership, like trust and decisions and accountability and those sorts of things. But in my experience, some of those things come because you've learned how to be curious as a leader, meaning you want to ask questions and listen to learn rather than listen to direct or listen to respond. And in my experience, leaders, especially when things get messy and chaotic, the ones that are intent on learning more tend to be better leaders. Not because they don't want to get action or they don't want to move things forward, but they're taking a moment to stop and understand what's going on around them to help put them in a better position. And so curiosity is one of the biggest ones that I talk to leaders about is how to be more curious. And the term I use for that is listen to learn. That's one of the biggest ones. The second one is about how you're transparent with your team. That this doesn't mean sharing everything. This means sharing things that they need to know in a context they need to know. That taking some time and walking a bit in their shoes to help understand where they're at and what's in it for them will help you be better in terms of your transparency. And the third one is finding a way to create communication that is clear and easy to understand. And this isn't from your perspective as the leader. This is again from the perspective of the people you're leading. And so how can you use curiosity, integrate transparency to clearly communicate with your teams? This, for me, are the big things that help when things get messy. They help when things get chaotic. And they smooth out that long middle if you do it on a regular basis, because you'll have less situations where people don't understand, people aren't aligned, where there's unnecessary issues that get created in your business because of things like that.
Okay, thank you so much, Craig. So for someone listening right now who is in a messy middle right now, the leader is confused, they are not failing but not thriving either. So tell us one thing you want them to remember from this entire conversation, something that will help them get out of the mess they are in. For example, the person who is leading me right now.
So here's what I would like to leave with anyone in a situation like that. One, I think you're probably doing a better job than you realize, because there's no report card for leading. The measure of leadership is that the people around you grow and get better at what they do. So you need to, as a leader, internalize that. The second thing I would say to someone like in a situation like that is leading is a set of skills. And the way I describe this is if you have a leak in your bathroom, you don't call an electrician, you call a plumber. And in a lot of cases, people have been promoted into leadership because they were good at what they did as an individual contributor, and no one's told them they needed to learn new skills. And I would encourage them to recognize that they're on a journey and that they do have to take some time and learn new skills and seek out people who've done this before and talk to them and listen to them and ask them questions, because this will help you as a leader build skills faster than anything else. But most importantly, remember that your leadership journey is just that. It's a journey. Sometimes it's going to be good. Sometimes it's going to be bad. Sometimes you're going to be better at it. Sometimes you're not going to be so good at it. And that's okay, because that's how it goes. That's what is intended.
All right, thank you so much. Your leadership journey is not a call to perfection, and that's also good. But don't you think people might not start, because there's a way words get to us now that they have heard that your leadership journey is not about being perfect. When things go wrong or when they are in a messy situation, they might start to accept it because they now feel like their journey is not about perfection. So what do you think?
I think you hit it you articulated it very well. That I loved how you said that this is not about perfection, and it really never has been. For me, it's about progress and recognizing the real reasons you lead, and they're personal to everyone. So I can't tell you what the things that will make you happy about leading are going to be. I know what mine are. I've told you some of them here today. But you have to find out what they are and make sure that you continue to focus on learning and being on the journey rather than trying to find an outcome and being perfect, like you said.
All right, Craig. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your journey and lessons you have learned. From living through uncertainty, growth, and adversity, the message is a powerful reminder that leadership is not about reaching a final destination where everything becomes easy. It's about developing the endurance, courage, and awareness to keep working through every season. So, for those who would like to learn more about you and your book, how can they do that?
It's really easy. It's my first name, Craig, A. Wahl, WAHL.com. There you can find out more about the services I offer, more about me as a person, and there's a spot there where you can pre-order the book.
Thank you so much, Craig. Also want to say a very big thank you to all my listeners. You guys are the reason why we are able to do this. Thank you all so much for tuning in and make sure to check out Craig. So, and do have a very wonderful day ahead. Thank you so much, Craig.
Thank you, Darlington. It was a great session.